I'm your camera, she's your camera.
Okay, because I was like, that is, wow.
You guys ready?
Okay. Hello, my name is La'Meshia Whittington, class of 2016, and proud to be an adjunct professor co-teaching racial equity and social justice in the Department of Sociology.
Hello, I'm Jovita Lee, class of 2016, and I am also an adjunct professor here at Meredith College at the Department of Sociology.
Ooh, so it is incredible to be back here like years later. I just kind of reflect on how we met. As soon as I transferred here, I went through the process of reestablishing, Meredith College Democrats, and just thinking like, okay, how can we, my vision was how can we create this pipeline to create internships for women, at all women's college, and how can we, even provide like this introduction between, life after college, if folks were interested in politics. And so that was where my journey began, but I had no idea that I would end up meeting like my sister for life.
Right.
That's what's really been incredible, just having that first Meredith College Democrats meeting you, and I feel like the rest has been history.
Absolutely, I would have to agree. I think my journey is definitely a little different, being a legacy. My mother, the late Lane Lee, who was Director of Teaching Fellows here at Meredith for many years, and so coming to Meredith for me was just a choice of continuing that legacy for sure, but definitely meeting you and, sending that first email, being interested in the VP position. I was like, I really want to be involved in a different way on this campus and to make sure that, the conversation that's happening on this campus is about equity and is about justice, and it has a grounding. And I think that opportunity presented itself when you reestablished that organization and us being able to connect. It was effortless for sure. So I definitely am grateful for that meeting because, as you said, I've definitely met my sister for life.
After our graduation in 2016, we, ended up working for similar environmental organizations. Now we're actually co-petitioners in a lawsuit against the government based on environmental pollution in Black and brown communities. I mean, we've been doing the work alongside each other. I mean, it began at Meredith, right? Yeah. But to know over the past now almost 5 years, don't want to admit that.
You're right. Let's not talk about age.
But here we are, years later, right? And we've worked in tandem on fighting for democracy, fighting for actual racial equity, be it in the environmental justice sector, being in like actually holding community workshops. And this just feels so full circle.
Absolutely. I feel the same. Definitely being in the environmental justice space with you and other spaces, democracy spaces, it just seems destined and it seems on time every time, right? Because a lot of, times you get emotional around your graduation because you think that's the last time.
Right.
Who would have known 2 weeks later we just would have been working with each other yet again. So it has been a beautiful journey to be able to be in these spaces together and actually build relationship with community, both of us being North Carolina natives. This is our home, this is our work, this is our land, and so us being so connected to this state and to the work of this state, it was just only natural for us to be able to connect in that way. And so for us to have so much experience within all of these sectors, it's just amazing. And to be able to bring the expertise back in our classroom and to speak about what we do each and every day as a part of our curriculum is just immaculate.
Oh my goodness. Teaching racial equity and social justice, it's a dream.
It is.
But it's also like that continuation of, what we built together through the Meredith College Democrats. Like we were literally driving students to the polls. We were literally hosting elected officials and candidates on the campus. We paired, our peers with internships on the governor's campaign. We were doing all that as undergrads, but then we're right back here creating still like this vision of just being with students. Absolutely. And what does it mean to support the next, generation of Meredith College graduates.
Absolutely. And I think through our work, especially now in a space like this, especially coming out of a year like 2020, we're in the midst of a pandemic still coming into 2021. There was several racial uprisings, with several tragedies that happened in 2020. It was just a unique time to come back. And I do think that it was predestined because this conversation needed to be had and this effort needed to be had, right? Because a lot of organizations and institutions as of right now are putting a focus on DEI goals, but what is really the work and what is going to be the long-standing legacy of that at these institutions and at these organizations, because we can't talk about the DEI goals without actually putting action to it and making sure that our students are equipped for it, because we can't just throw out that term and assume everybody understands, right? So we have to get back to the ground level work of like, let's break it down, let's look at the history of it, and then let's see how it plays out in today's time. Right. And so I think our course has been able to do that, and I hope that is something that is long-standing to actually create the change that we wish to see here on this campus.
No, you're spot on. I couldn't agree more. And I really think about like even the legacy of your mom. I mean, being able to connect past to present. And what does it mean to have the legacy of your mother who established such scholarship and an opportunity for the very students to be with us, to talk about what does it mean to carry forth racial equity? What does it mean to be, anti-racist in a world that oftentimes isn't inclusive of BIPOC individuals, of students of various identities? And so to be able to be in this space to connect that history, and I know you're honoring your mom. I'm just humbled to be able to walk alongside you.
Thank you.
And so just to look at the students being able to carry on the legacy of many of the great women, right, that have gone on, the many great Black women that have built and forged the path ahead, and being able to be in a space where we're creating a safe space.
Yes.
We're creating like literally a class that is about freedom of expression, freedom of voice, but in a safe space to where students can say, like you said, how can I belong as a BIPOC student in a world and autonomy and independence and still be who I need to be to receive the education that I always envisioned? It's incredible to be here and to really see the class take fruition to what we saw last year.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that we are absolutely, as a team, creating that space and putting forth that effort because, with my mother and her scholarship, that does create opportunity for Black educators, right? And so for us to come back and be Black educators on this campus is just honestly a full circle moment. And so to be able to connect with our students and create that space and create these conversations and hopefully really touch our students in a way that they feel that they're actually building a relationship, because being an educator is building a relationship, right? It's not just giving information and hoping your students can regurgitate it. You want them to be able to understand it and really take it with them moving forward, because education doesn't stop at graduation, right? And so you want to make sure that you're establishing that groundwork so when they go off into the world as full adults, they're able to take those tools and actually utilize them in their everyday life. And so that is definitely my hope coming from this course that we're teaching.
Right. And I just think about like the racial equity and social justice class, right? We walk students through history.
Yes.
In our pedagogy, it is grounded in sociology, right? So how are we looking at, of course, the macro environment that we're all living in, that is the nation, that is global, but how are we looking at how we interact with each other in day to day, right?
Yes.
So we look at history and how, historical laws and what's the impetus for how we see our engagements today, industries, right? When we evaluate school to prison pipeline, when we evaluate medical deserts and maternity rates that are very adverse for Black mothers and infants, we actually look at that at the top of the class. But by the time we get to the half point of the semester, we're already engaging in matrix and principles of how to actually live every day, dismantling oppressive systems. And what does that look like in any profession, right?
Yes.
And I think that's what I really love about this class is it's real life. It's practical. And then by the end of the semester, we actually have professional career Black women from different walks of life, right?
Yes.
From agriculture and environmental, all the way to being funders, to executive directors, to electeds that come into the class virtually in a pandemic now,
Right.
but we hope in person soon. And they speak to the students about this is how I have been able to walk in my truth.
Yes.
And be the boss that I am,
Absolutely
right? The woman that I
right.
am. And these are the principles that I've carried with me so that our
Yeah.
students are leaving with the encouragement of this is what it means to apply as both an ally and a BIPOC student.
Yes.
What it means to have DEI, but what it means to actually be a well-rounded, well-loved in this
Yes.
classroom student. And that's the vision that we've had at Meredith College.
Absolutely. And I think us being able to bring in those women is going to be imperative and impactful, because a lot of times when you cover these topics of racial equity or social justice, it's a pre-assumption that it's only relating to justice work or political work. And this shows up anywhere. So if we're talking about education, if we're talking about health, race and equity shows up everywhere because unfortunately we've been presented with a society that is steeped in it, and so you cannot ignore it. And so we need to examine, which we've already done with our students, the historical impact. Right. What is the root of this? Because these things did not start in 2020 when we started seeing more and more uprisings, right? Like, this is a long-standing history in this country, and we need to understand that. And I think, bringing these women in to speak to how it impacts their everyday life well after college, I think is so important, because students are going to be able to recognize that this is an ongoing work. Racial equity will always be life's work.
I completely agree. Completely agree. And, the last thought that really comes to mind, and just reflecting over our journey, is it does, and I hope it continues to do what my mother has done, what our
Absolutely.
grandmothers have done, what our mothers have done, and that's continue to create a pathway.
Absolutely.
For the legacy to continue. And
Yes.
so I know that we're not the first to be racial equity,
Right.
so, not the first to be Black and brown educators, but we certainly want to be a part, at least I'll say the I statement, I really want to be a part of making sure that we're forging the path
Yes.
for the future educators
Right.
that are speaking truth to power, that can see that I can speak about sociology. I can also teach, whatever my passion is, right? It can be math, it could be being a statistician,
Right.
but I can still anchor who I am and be completely supported. And here I am, and I learned this at Meredith College. Here I am, I learned this with these Black
Right.
and brown educators. And so that's just, just living the dream in this moment. I mean, I get we have a lot of hurdles still to overcome.
absolutely.
I mean, we look at last year, and it was very heavy, and the students have had a safe space, I hope, to be able to share just what it's meant to be, to live, and to have to study at the same time in the midst of a pandemic and social uprisings. But my hope is that there will be more Black and brown educators that join us here on this campus, anchoring racial equity and social justice. So
I
that's my
completely
hope.
agree. That is my hope as well. As you said, we are not the first, but I absolutely do not want to be the last. So I definitely hope that, we're creating space not only for our students, but for other educators to come in and feel confident in what they want to teach, because I want educators to feel supported, specifically BIPOC educators, because there's such a lack, but there's not a lack of talent. There's just a lack of hire. And so I definitely want to make sure that this is an example that, is necessary. It's necessary to diversify your staff. It's necessary, to have educators from all walks of life on your campus, because there's going to be different experiences coming from different students, and you're going to need folks equipped to be able to, in a healthy way, educate those students and prepare them for after graduation.
Well, sister, I'm glad to be here alongside
Absolutely,
you.
sister.